So welcome to the Circles of Practice, Public Offerings, Global Meditation for Peace and Compassion. This is a very special meditation that we've put aside to really help us to get connected with a global community that is suffering so much. As you know, there is such an incredibly horrible crisis, war that is happening in Ukraine. So much humanitarian suffering there. But I also want to bring light to the matter of so much suffering in, unfortunately, many other parts of our world as well. So let us come together today to offer our compassion, to offer our peace. You know, the famous Vietnamese monk says, Thich Nhat Hanh says, when the crowded refugee boats met with storms or pirates, if anyone panicked, all would be lost. But if even one person stayed calm, it was enough. It showed the way for everyone to survive. Can we bring that calmness into our lives? Can we bring that calmness and share it to our friends around the world? Viktor Frankl, who is an Auschwitz survivor, wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And I really feel that the people of Ukraine have been showing us that, standing strong, being united. But so have so many other people. As we see communities, whether in our own local communities or communities around the world, the strength in unity, the strength in compassion and peace has really brought people into a mindset of optimism, banding together, resourcefulness, and so much more. You know, as this crisis in Ukraine started more than 2 weeks ago, I was sitting with my father and we were just talking about an experience that we ourselves had lived through. He was telling me the story of when I was just 3 months old living in Pakistan. He too, and my mom, had to take care of me and hide under the table, under beds. We too were living through a war. We didn't have bomb shelters, but we were being bombed in my city in Pakistan. So, you know, having that experience becomes a part of you. It becomes who you are. And in our situation, we were talking about how it's strengthened us. It's created resiliency within us. And we were the lucky ones to be able to survive this. So my hearts are with all of those that have not survived it so far. My hearts are with all of those around the world that are going through such calamities right now. So let us come together today to offer what we can with our hearts open. Today's session will be a little bit different. We're going to be starting with a talk. We will also do some questions from the audience. So if you would like to ask a question to Ukrainian-born MSc teacher, Dr. Janine Scarlett, in a few moments, please put it in the chat box privately to me, and we'll make some time to answer a few questions. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our main speaker today. I'm really honored to introduce this lovely person who I can now call my friend, my colleague, Janina. Dr. Janina Scarlett is a licensed clinical psychologist, author, and TEDx speaker. She's a Ukrainian-born refugee. She survived Chernobyl, radiation, and persecution. She immigrated to the United States at the age of 12 with her family. And she later was so inspired when she watched the X-Men movies that she developed her own form of psychotherapy called superhero therapy to help patients that were struggling with anxiety, depression, PTSD. This form of therapy got a lot of rave reviews. In fact, Janina is now a recipient of the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Award by the United Nations Association for her work. She is also a compassion cultivation teacher, as well as a mindful self-compassion teacher. And we're so absolutely happy to have her here today. So without much ado, I'd like to give her the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Laila. Thank you, all of you who are here today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And it just brings me to tears seeing this kind of global unity. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your soul. I want to tell you that I see you and I appreciate you. I know, I imagine that, like myself, you don't have to be from Ukraine to have your heart bleeding over what's happening, because of course what's happening is devastating. And when we see people suffering, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in another country, we suffer too, even if we're not there, even if we don't know personally anybody that's going through a difficult time. And the reason why we experience pain when we see other people suffering is due to something called empathic distress. Some of you might be familiar with that term already. For those who aren't, I just wanted to discuss it a little bit. Empathic distress is what happens when we see other people suffering, and due to our empathic ability of being able to understand their pain, we might feel so overwhelmed with their pain that we might feel helpless. And that's the key. Empathic distress happens when we feel helpless, except that we're not helpless. A lot of times we might think, well, what can I do? And we might think that we can only help in one way. And I myself, I'm a psychologist. I'm no warrior, but I've had multiple conversations with my husband, and thoughts that maybe it's time for me to go back to Ukraine and fight, because I was at first only thinking about helping in one way. But then I realized there are many different ways that we can help. And one way that we manage empathic distress is by supporting ourselves, and so that we can then show up for other people. Some of you are mentioning in the chat mirror neurons. That's absolutely right. Mirror neurons are responsible for empathy. They are what's responsible for us tasting sour feeling in our mouth when we see somebody else eating a lemon, or even hearing somebody else say a lemon. I imagine some of you might have felt a little bit of that tart taste in your mouth right when I said lemon. And when we see other people suffering, we feel it too. And when we can honor our own pain as valid, because it is, when we can be there for ourselves because we deserve it too, we can start seeing a wider picture. It's almost like the blinders that we were wearing widen, and we can start to see other options, such as that we can help by joining a meditation group. We can help by In some cases, whether it's sending a donation, whether it's sharing information, whether it's checking on our friends or checking on people that might not even know anyone in the zone of conflict, but just checking on people because people are suffering right now. A lot of times, I think people might underestimate the power of joined meditation. I think a part of it not only makes us feel better emotionally, there is a physical change. Now, as a past, now retired neuroscientist, I can tell you that our energy affects not only us, but also things in our environment. And according to some researchers, even things on the other side of the world. Some of you might be familiar with the plant study, where researchers had two plants that were treated completely identically. They received the same amount of sunlight, same amount of water, same amount of nutrients. There was only one difference. The researchers would talk kindly to one plant and not kindly to the other. The plant that the researchers treated with verbal kindness thrived, and the other did not. The study has been replicated over and over and over again. And what I'm trying to say here is that our energy, our vibration makes a difference. When we do it on our own, we're sending that loving vibration to other people, whether we know them or whether we don't. When we do it together, that vibration magnifies. And that's the power of our meditation groups. That's the power of the Sangha. That's the power of the practices that we do together. This morning, weighted by the trauma, the tragedy, some of the updates from my friends in Ukraine, I struggled to get out of bed like I have for the last 2 weeks. But right now, my heart is vibrating with this lively energy, and it's thanks to all of you. And the way that we are going to practice today is we're going to practice easing our own distress first. My cat wanted to be a part of this meditation too, apparently. And then we're going to practice sending loving and kind wishes to the world. We're going to do a combination of a couple of different practices. One of them being the compassionate breathing practices, where we're going to practice breathing for ourselves and then over time breathing out for others. And then we're going to also do a part of a loving kindness meditation. All of it will begin with a gentle, mindful breathing into parts of our body where we're holding distress. Now, what I can tell you is this. First responders need to make sure that the scene of an accident is safe in order to assist other people. In order for us to really show up for Ukraine, for really any country where distress is happening, for our families, for our friends, we need to show up for ourselves so that we have more built up energy to give. I'm happy to answer a couple of questions if any of you would like to ask some questions before we begin our practice.
Yeah, that would be great, Janina. We've got a couple of questions already in the chat box. So Shelley is asking, how do we break through numbness? I sometimes feel a strong sense of numbness with very difficult situations.
Yeah. You know, In their self-compassion teaching, Kristen Neff and Chris Germer talk about opening and closing emotionally. To me, both as an MSc teacher and also as a trauma therapist, what I have found is that numbness is a way we close because sometimes we need to. Sometimes I think we're in so much pain. We might be in so much distress that we need to close for a little bit. And I think that's an indication that we need support. Sometimes it means stepping away from the news for for a short period of time. Of course, it's important to stay connected, but it's also important to take care of ourselves. Sometimes it might mean doing our own meditation practice, or maybe spending some time with our pets, our loved ones, our books, right? Maybe watching a light show so that we can find a little bit of opening. As Kristen Neff says, we offer ourselves compassion not to get rid of suffering, but because we're suffering. And I think numbness, for many of us, myself included, is often an indication, like check an engine light, that we're suffering. And maybe we can offer gratitude to the part of our body that says, hey, let's take a break. Let's focus on you. And then when you're ready, let's get back out there.
Thank you so much, Janina. So we have another question from a participant that would like to stay anonymous. This person is asking, how do the people of Ukraine tap into so much resiliency? Because we see just really horrific images, but we also see, smiles and strengths and resiliency to go back to cities that have been bombed to help rebuild. Any idea of where they are tapping into that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. What a beautiful question. I think that this level of resilience comes from a sense of purpose. Very often the sense of helplessness, the sense of there's not much I can do, can make us feel detached. But the sense of there's always something I can do can give us a sense of purpose that can give us the will to live, that can give us a way to help other people. And it's that unity. It's that unity that's keeping people strong. I've seen multiple videos of people who have no medical training, volunteering with humanitarian efforts, learning first aid from other people that are now training others in first aid and helping other people. People who are not cooks or bakers by trade now taking up cooking and baking for other people to feed the people that are out there, people that are fighting. And I think when we find that sense of a job isn't quite the right term, a purpose, really, an action that we can do, an action that is helpful, I think that is what keeps resilience. And by all of you showing up here today, and if you're watching it later as a recording, by you watching this is you showing up. This is your action. This is one thing that you can do.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question. So Janice in New York is asking, how do we work with the guilt felt for feeling sad, angry, but knowing it is nothing compared to what people suffering in Ukraine and other war-torn places are experiencing?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. I'm so glad that you did, because I imagine a lot of people are going through the same. The truth is, everyone's feelings are valid. There's no There's no hierarchy as to whose feelings are more valid. Everyone is suffering. You're allowed to be sad. Again, due to our empathic nature, we're going to be devastated. We're going to grieve. And I think rather than seeing it as other people's pain is more valid than mine, rather than seeing it as us or them, we can say our pain is valid. We as human beings are grieving and suffering right now together. And we're also in it together to support one another. We can grieve together by perhaps engaging in whichever grieving rituals are appropriate for you and your culture, whether it's lighting candles, doing a particular practice. It is okay to do that, even if you didn't personally know the people who have died. Because again, we're all in it together. We're all one family, and your feelings are valid.
Thank you. Thank you for the great responses. Really appreciate that. So now, everyone, we are going to make some space for Janina to do a guided practice for us. So if you would, get yourself into a comfortable position, and I will give the floor to you, Janina.
So I'm going to invite you to take a few moments to get into a posture that best supports your body, whether it's sitting, standing, or lying down, knowing that at any time you can adjust your posture if you need to, especially if you're experiencing any pain or discomfort. And we're going to start with a few slow grounding breaths just to arrive to this moment. Taking a few moments just to notice yourself in this space. Noticing that in this very moment, you're not in a rush to get anywhere. In this very moment, you have arrived. And taking a few moments to scan your body for any areas of tension or discomfort, any areas where we might hold on to grief. It might appear as pain, nausea, lump in our throat, perhaps a brain fog or a feeling of fullness or emptiness. And see if you can identify 3 areas where you might be holding some of these sensations. For example, your shoulders, throat, chest, stomach, or perhaps your head. And if nothing comes up for you, maybe staying with your chest as a default area of practice. So, starting with one of these areas, such as your chest, your stomach, or another area, we're going to now take a minute to breathe into just this area, where with each exhale, we're perhaps imagining this area detensing, unwinding a little bit, soothing and softening. So we're going to take about a minute in silence to do so now. All right, big breath. And now we'll perhaps pick another area where your grief or struggle might live in this moment, such as your shoulders, your throat, your chest or stomach, or feel free to return to the same area if you wish. We're going to take another silent minute just to breathe, allowing this area to soothe and settle. All right, big breath. And if you'd like, feel free to focus on the third area if you've identified one. Or if you'd like, feel free to focus on the sensation of your head. Sometimes grief, difficulty can make us feel heavy, can create a feeling of a pressure on top of our head, or can make us feel like we're in a fog. So perhaps taking a minute to imagine that some of that fog, some of those clouds have parted, and maybe the sun has come out. Perhaps allowing some ease for your mind, as well as for the sensation on top and around your head. And we're going to take a silent minute to do that now. And big breath and let it out. And if you'd like, feel free to bring your hand to your heart center or your belly or wherever it feels most supportive. And we're going to take a few moments just to focus on our in-breath now, where with each in-breath, perhaps we can imagine breathing in compassion, kindness, and healing for ourselves. We're going to take a few moments just to practice. With each inhale, breathing in compassion, kindness, and healing for yourself. If you'd like, perhaps imagining a healing light entering your body, allowing you to heal the parts of you that are struggling and aching with each inhale. And now adding our focus to our exhale, where with each exhale, perhaps we can send healing, protective wishes or energy to people of Ukraine or to people in other countries or all over the world who are suffering. Wherever your energy wants or needs to go to today is fine. So with each exhale, now sending out that light, compassion, support, protection. And taking a few moments now to focus on the exhale, on sending this energy out to the world, either to specific people or specific countries, or to the entire universe. And now allowing your focus to go to both your inhale and your exhale if it wasn't here already. So breathing in for you to recharge, strengthen, and support yourself with healing, kind energy. And breathing out a blanket of kindness, support, compassion, and protection to the specific individuals, or perhaps more globally. Breathing in for ourselves and breathing out for others. Breathing in kindness, warmth, compassion, and protection for ourselves. And breathing out kindness, strength, compassion, and protection for others. Perhaps a way of saying to yourself, in for me and out for you. One for me and one for you. And staying in your chosen practice for a few moments. And then perhaps adding an element of loving kindness to this practice, knowing that at any time, if it becomes too distressing, you can always return to the breathing practice, to breathing in for yourself and others, or just you if you're feeling overwhelmed. So perhaps bringing to mind the people of Ukraine, if this is in your practice today. And maybe silently, in your own words, maybe even in your own language, sending the people of Ukraine loving and protective wishes. For example, may you be safe. May you be healthy. May there be peace. Or perhaps, may you know how loved you are and how much you matter. And if you'd like, perhaps including a different country or all countries into this practice. Once again, silently, if you'd like, in your own words or in your own language, sending the intended people the wishes of loving kindness. For example, may you be safe. May you find peace. May you be protected. May you know how loved you are. May you know how much you matter. And perhaps adding every single person in this practice to your meditation as well, including yourself. Perhaps expanding it beyond this practice, perhaps to specific people or the entire world. Wherever your practice takes you today is perfectly fine. And once again, your own words, maybe in your own language, we can send the wishes of loving kindness, including ourselves now. May we be safe. May we find peace. May we be protected and cared for. May we know how loved we are. May we know how much we matter and how much of a difference we make in this world. And taking a few moments just to sit with whatever's coming up for you. Perhaps taking a moment to imagine the clouds lifting, the sun coming out, beaming with hope. Perhaps taking a moment to breathe in this hope and breathe it out to send it to the universe. And slowly, gently beginning to reawaken. Maybe noticing the sensation of your toes or fingers, if these sensations are available to you. Maybe noticing the sounds in your environment. Noticing yourself sitting, standing, or lying down as you are, supported by the floor, the chair, your bed, or your couch. And in just a few moments, you will hear the sound of the bell. And when you do, feel free to take as much time as you need to open your eyes and come back into this space.
Thank you so much, Janina. That was just really beautiful. Really appreciate that beautiful offering. I know there's been a lot of people showing their gratitude in the chat box, and I'd like to share a few of them. But before I do, I'd like to close out the session first with a poem that really speaks to me. You know, I went searching for a poem the last few days that really spoke to me. And through it all, I think this one really captures it for me for today. So this one is by Roger Keyes, and it's called Hokusai Says. Hokusai says, look carefully. He says, pay attention, notice. He says, keep looking, stay curious. He says, there is no end in seeing. He says, look forward to getting old. He says, keep changing. You just get more who you really are. He says, get stuck, accept it, repeat yourself as long as it is interesting. He says, keep doing what you love. He says, keep praying. He says, every one of us is a child. Every one of us is ancient. Every one of us has a body. He says, every one of us is frightened. He says, every one of us has to find a way to live with fear. He says, everything is alive. Shells, buildings, people, fish, mountains, trees, wood is alive. Water is alive. Everything has its own life. Everything lives inside of us. He says, live with the world inside you. He says, it doesn't matter if you draw or write books. It doesn't matter if you saw wood or catch fish. It doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda or the shadows of the trees and grasses in your garden. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. Contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. Satisfaction and strength is life living through you. He says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Love, feel, let life take you by the hand. Let life live through you. So, really picked this specific poem just to allow us to connect with our insides, with all the fear or sadness or confusion or grief that may be coming up for us individually, collectively. Let us tap into that content part of us. Let us allow life to live through us. And perhaps we shall be agents of change as well. So with that, I really want to thank Dr. Janina Scarlett for this really beautiful session. I want to thank everyone that's here today for your beautiful presence. I know there's a lot of people saying thank you in the chat box. Really warms my heart to see people from so many different places here today. So what I'd like to do is, since we are at the end of our session today, I'm gonna just ask that as we say goodbye, we go ahead and maybe say goodbye in our native language. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the pinning off here. And I'm gonna put everybody on gallery view. So if you are comfortable, unmute yourself and say goodbye to our dear friends here in your own mother tongue.
Namaste.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Everybody.
Everyone saying
Bye.
Janina.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Laila.
Good to see you.
Laila.
Thank you for
Let's see
being
you.
here.
Yes, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, Kanda.
Amazing session.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.